All right. Good morning, everyone. We're in Washington, D.C. at the correctional facility where the political prisoners from January 6th are currently being held. I am with the members of Congress, Gates, Green, Gohmert, and Gosar, who are waiting to see if they can be granted access to go inside the correctional facility so that they can tour and see the conditions for themselves of what is happening. Right now, they have come outside. We are waiting for a supervisor to approve their entrance, and it's been about 5 minutes or so. Right now, they've come outside and asked us to put on masks before we go inside. So as you can see right now, we've got in front of us Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia and Representative Matt Gaetz. Marjorie, do you mind if I ask you a few questions while we're waiting? Okay, let me mute this really quick. So what is the idea behind today? What do you want to see from this correctional facility or not see?
Well, we may get some questions answered here in just a second. We've all been writing letters, sending letters, asking questions about January 6th. We visited the Department of Justice on Tuesday, and so we're here at the jail in D.C. just asking questions. There's been a lot of stories that have been talked about from their families, the detainees that are being held here from January 6th, from their attorneys, and all over social media. So we're just here asking questions, and we feel like it's important as members of Congress to ask questions in every way about January 6th, since Nancy Pelosi has decided to make her committee a completely political witch hunt. And we don't want to do that. So we're here checking on due process, asking questions to make sure that folks here aren't being treated like political prisoners, because they have their rights.
And what are some of the stories you've heard of the alleged treatment of these January 6th prisoners?
Well, some of the things that I had put in my letter were, for examples, were stories like one detainee apparently was beaten so badly his skull was fractured and is now blind in one eye. Also, stories about solitary confinement, anywhere from 22 to 24 hours a day. Also, an attorney shared a story about one woman who was arrested at the Capitol, housed alone and shackled when she is outside of her cell, and which is only allowed for 5 hours a week outside the cell. So these are the things that we're here to ask questions about, and no one's answered our questions. As members of Congress, we provide oversight. We visit detention facilities at the border. We visit many places like that. So we're coming out and asking the questions.
Good for y'all. I mean, it's right in the home of where all these representatives lives, and it appears that you are the first 4 people to come and ask for this tour. Is that correct?
Oh, I believe Congressman Gohmert has attempted to get access previously, but there are 2 categories of information that we're principally concerned about. One is exculpatory evidence that is not available to people who are facing criminal process. That's why we went to the Department of Justice earlier this week to have a talk about that evidence and the plans for it. And our second category of concern regards the treatment of people. And while it is normal for members of Congress to inspect detention facilities, there appears to be something very different about this place. It's unlike the places on the border where Congresswoman Greene recently had an inspection, or unlike places where, as former criminal justice chairman in my state legislature, I was able to have access. So, Congressman Gohmert and I serve on the Judiciary Committee. We have a specific oversight responsibility here. Congressman Gosar serves on the Oversight Committee that has broad jurisdiction over these questions. And, we would want the American people to know that what's unusual is not members of Congress coming to a detention facility to conduct a review and ask questions. What's unusual is that after repeated attempts by Congressman Gohmert, we seem to be unable to do what is a normal part of our job.
And you had a press conference less than 48 hours ago. Did you have any remarks or feedback from the DOJ or the Attorney General? Have they reached out to you with any form of communication after many failed attempts for you to contact them?
After asking questions for months, after being ignored for months, after sending notice that we would be arriving, and then after arriving, we were unable to get any answers, and we still have gotten no answers. But we're not the type of members of Congress who just go away. We're going to continue to show up and press these issues, because whether it's access to evidence or treatment of people, we have a job to do here to conduct oversight.
Do we actually know, sir, how many of the breachers are actually incarcerated at this time?
Well, we understand it's 50 or so here, and we're not here for one specific case. We're not trying to interfere in a case, but as a judge and as a congressman, I have inspected many jails and prison facilities. In fact, I toured one, inspecting, because we'd heard stories, one in West Virginia. That one, there were no fences, you know, it was like a little campus. And everybody knew that if you walked away from that place, that you would go to a tougher place, so nobody wanted to walk away because it was such a congenial atmosphere. Not quite the same spirit here, and but you know, it is so egregious to think about the people that have burned, looted, destroyed, being immediately released, even killed, whereas here we're understanding they're not being shown the evidence against them, the specific charges. They're using charges like obstruction. Well, basically what the Democrats did in 2016 when they spent 26 hours obstructing a session of Congress. So anyway, we'd like to see the conditions. We'd like to know how people are being treated here. And so we got somebody that stepped down.
All right, and it looks like we have an officer who's come out, a correctional officer, and she's accusing, it sounds like, the members of Congress of trespassing by coming in to... Her supervisor has said, quote, that they are trespassing by attempting to come into this correctional facility.
People that vote on whether or not to fund you at what level, and we're trespassing.
I understand that.
My
I'll see if my
gosh, the
supervisor's
government is
available.
upside down.
Can you please go ask your supervisor?
You right now are obstructing entrance into this facility. This is the way people enter. You're obstructing your
We
entrance.
won't obstruct the entrance,
Nope,
but
we'll
we are
help
not
anybody.
trespassing. No, that's what you're doing. Okay, we'll clear the entrance, we'll clear the pathway.
All right, so these four representatives have currently been accused of trespassing and obstruction so far. Very interesting.
I just asked her if she was ready to talk to us and answer our questions about the January 6th detainees, and she told me that we were trespassing. I told her that as members of Congress, we have oversight over federal prisons. We've got members of judiciary here, members of oversight here, both committees that oversee facilities like this. We absolutely are not trespassing, and if that attitude is any indication of how they're treating their prisoners inside, I have great concern.
Well, if they can consider us trespassers that fund this facility, have top secret clearance, and I know there are some, I mean, that have, actually, you know, consorted with spies and things, but we are cleared for top secret, and we do inspect facilities, and I've never, ever, in the years I've been in Congress, ever run into an issue like this until this administration took over and until this speaker took over this time. I mean, trespassing, actually, the Border Patrol used that same word when I was going down, or trying to go down, a federal road that we're authorized to do. So anyway.
Ms. Green, has anyone responded to any of your letters requiring about the status of some of the breachers here?
No one has responded to any of our letters.
None.
We've all sent letters and asked questions repeatedly, and there's been no response at all. When we went to the Department of Justice, we weren't even let in the lobby. We were forced to stay outside on the sidewalk, which is dangerous for all of us. It was
It is
only a
pretty
few years
ridiculous.
ago that a Bernie Sanders communist went out and shot Republicans on a baseball field. The Department of Justice left us on the sidewalk, refused to answer our questions. Now we're visiting a detention facility here, a federal prison, to ask questions, and we're being told that we're trespassing, which is unbelievable. It's shocking.
Just to be clear, what is your goal here then?
We are here asking questions about the detainees.
I wanted to inspect the facility.
Here, I'll give
see
you
how
an
people
example
here
of my
are treated.
questions.
We
I'll
had
tell
gotten
you.
some reports, in fairness, and
Yep.
we wanted to see for ourselves.
Simple questions.
As I've done before and never run into this, but that was a different administration.
Like, what are visitation hours? Access to religious texts and reasonable religious service accommodations, access to exercise, portion of time in lockdown, solitary confinement, nutritional content, access to communication with families and attorneys, whether the prosecution made potentially exculpatory evidence available to the appropriate defense counsels of the accused. We're just asking questions. These are the same types of questions that we ask when we go to detention centers at the border, where they house illegals that come into our country. I just went to one just recently in California where U.S. Marshals and ICE keep detainees and ask the same types of questions.
And what was your response in the conversation you had with someone, a representative of the D.C. Corrections Facilities just a moment ago?
They told us that we were trespassing, but when I went to the detention center in California, ICE and U.S. Marshals were wonderful. They gave us a full tour, and it was a beautiful, clean facility. And I thought, wow, America is the most generous country in the world, and how we treat people that have broken laws to come in our country.
And normally, we go somewhere that's
Sir,
federal.
are you
We
are you
show our
the supervisor?
ID, our congressional ID, 435 of these, then
I think
we're
we're
not
waiting to
treated like
speak
this.
to the supervisor.
Mr. Gates?
Yeah, I mean, it's very unusual for members of Congress to
Oh,
be
she's the
denied the
supervisor?
opportunity to inspect a facility. We've all had the chance to do that before, so we're wondering why this circumstance is so unique.
All right, so we're stepping outside right now. It appears the supervisor's actually out here, and we're going to see what they have to say. It seems that they are avoiding them. They're standing outside. The supervisors are standing outside hanging out in a corner, avoiding, what's really going on here, which is these 4 congressmen simply asking for permission to enter and inspect the facilities here today. We're live. This is Right Side Broadcasting Network, and just getting a supervisor right now appears to be a problem.
The supervisor came down, was standing right here, and turned her back on me. The other one says she won't talk anymore, that we're trespassers. She's not saying any more than that. We have turned a corner. We're in totalitarian Marxist territory here. This is the way third world people get treated. People that appropriate money, that vote to appropriate money, they are normally given a chance in a republic, a democratic republic, given a chance to inspect that for which they are paying. These people say they've gone on total secret. They're not letting any of us see how they treat prisoners. They're not talking to us. It is a dictatorship, and they're free to do what they wish.
Wait, I have a question. What if we had been here just to check on the entire population? I mean,
Well,
sincerely.
that's what I am.
We are checking on the
I
entire
am here
population.
to check. I want to see the
Why are we being
conditions.
kicked out and told that we're trespassing for asking about conditions?
She doesn't have a
of-
basis. She couldn't give an explanation for that. I asked.
Well, and one thing I noticed is that the employees here, the federal employees paid for with U.S. taxpayer dollars, spent more time taking photos of us and videos of us just for coming to ask questions than they spent to try to sincerely give us an opportunity to do what members of Congress do probably in every month in the year in some place in the country, and that is to review a detention facility. This is particularly troubling because the issue of federal prisons has been bipartisan in our recent history. Louis and I joined in passing the First Step Act, and that was something that was an opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to work together to see that conditions in federal prisons were indeed humane. And here, when we come to check on that work and to see if it's been fulfilled, we're told that we're unwelcome. And so I think that we're going to have to take continued action in the Congress to gain access to get the answers that are needed.
Yeah, and let me say, by comparison, I get regular invitations. I mean, I used to when I was a state district judge, and as a member of Congress, I get regular invitations to come tour incarceration facilities around my district. I'm welcome around the state, but those are state of Texas facilities. Those that are now run by a Democratic administration, much like the Border Patrol, they say, we are doing things in secret like a good totalitarian government, and you don't get to know or see. You get to vote, but you don't get to see anything the money is being spent on. This has got to change.
They said this was a supervisor. They had us come out here. She went back in and they locked us out.
We're currently locked out from. Let's confirm this. All right, let's go see if we can open the doors. It'll be really interesting. Come on, camera. Oh, let's see. All right, Matt Gaetz is going to go and see if we can, if we're actually locked out. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz is currently locked out of the D.C. Correctional Facility. This is. Oh, let's see if they lock him out too. How can you? An attorney is here to visit his client, and they have locked him out from seeing his client. This is ridiculous. We have our masks on. Everyone here has their masks on who are attempting to go inside. And currently, as Marjorie Taylor Greene said earlier, if this is any indication of how they are treating their prisoners, it's as bad as they say it is.
And have not given us access. This was apparently a bait and switch. We are here just to speak to a supervisor, and when the supervisor came out and we came out to have that discussion, they literally ran behind us and locked the doors so that we wouldn't have the opportunity to present our identification and seek a review.
This is a rare time under this administration where prison is used to lock people out instead of
Because they don't
lock
want to
people
know what's
in.
happening
They don't want
inside.
us to know.
Apparently, they don't want anyone to know what's happening inside.
Scary. You mentioned earlier, if this is any indication of how they're treating the prisoners, I mean, this is very scary, as you just said. We're more concerned now than we were when we got here. I can't believe this. How do you feel?
I came here with just basic questions. I have far more questions now. I don't know who is running this prison. I don't know what they think, what authority they think they have for locking us out and telling us we're trespassing.
So now you came here as a member of Congress, member of the Judiciary Committee. Presumably you have oversight of federal facilities like this. And tell me about your experience here.
Well, I expect that my colleagues and I will have specific questions for the Attorney General and the head of the Federal Bureau of Prisons about what the protocols are for access for members of Congress. We've had access to facilities previously. Congresswoman Greene recently toured a facility in California, and so it's very unusual for us to have trickery as a part of a normal congressional delegation to review a facility. We're not here to make any judgments on any particular case or circumstance. We're here to conduct a review, to ask questions, and this has been very devious and very disheartening.
And to be clear, you do not know at this point how many of these January 6th breachers, protesters, are actually here.
No, we don't have a clear understanding
But
of
that's
where
what you were
everyone's
trying
being
to
held.
ascertain, right?
Yeah, we're trying to ascertain where people are, the conditions they're being held, and their access to basic civil rights and basic due process. This should not even be a partisan issue. And as America tries to put forward an image to the world that our systems, that our institutions ought to be replicated and copied, this is a very stark and very grave reminder of the worst that we see of the Biden administration, not that which we would want to present as
Mrs.
a
Greene,
model.
what if there was someone in here from your district in Northwest Georgia?
I would have no idea. I would have asked, of course, on behalf of their family, But just as Congressman Gates said, we're not here to get involved in cases. We're just here to assess conditions like we would any other facility that we have oversight over.
But presumably, if there were someone in a federal facility here from Northwest Georgia, you being the member of Congress, you would have just been denied access to see one of your constituents. Is that essentially it?
Absolutely, or their family. And I'm concerned for anyone in this facility. They don't think we're welcome. They think we're trespassing. I cannot believe that.
A lawyer was also just denied entry who was coming to see one of his clients as we walked up.
That is what we've heard over and over. See, that's another reason why we were here to ask. You can't imagine, how can any person, an inmate, be denied access to their lawyer? When I was in California, at the detention center at the border, they have full access to any kind of legal supplies they need, books, computers, and attorneys at any time they ask for it. These are people that aren't even citizens of our country, don't pay any taxes, broke the law to come in our country, and they have all the availability to attorneys and help that they need, yet these people have nothing.
A lot has happened in the 15 minutes that we've gotten here. Could you just kind of summarize the events since we've arrived?
We have sent letters indicating that we would be here to conduct a review. We arrived. Congressman Gomert presented the credentials of the congressional delegation to the guards. They got a supervisor out who spent a great deal of time videoing us and taking photographs of us, and very little time explaining the basis for denying us what normal members of Congress do under normal circumstances, which is review federal facilities. It's particularly egregious with Congressman Gomert and I serving on the Judiciary Committee that has oversight over these institutions, to be denied. And now we'll be heading back to the Hill to cast our votes, but also to, I think, ripen these questions for our colleagues, and hopefully more Republicans will join us in asking these questions and pushing back against really an unprecedented denial of access for those who have Article 1 powers of the purse that the Constitution vests in us. But we do have to get back to the Hill for our votes.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Final remarks. That was Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Again, we are at the correctional facility here in Washington, D.C. You can see it right behind me. We arrived about 15 minutes ago. We went inside. We were not allowed in. I guess one of the correctional officers actually told us that the supervisor was standing outside, so we stepped outside to discuss with the supervisor, and that appeared to be a bait and trick situation because the second we stepped outside, they locked the doors. Not only did they ban the 4 members of Congress from going inside, but they also banned one of the attorneys who was coming to check on one of his clients. So really a scary moment right now for the United States judicial system here in Washington, D.C. The members of Congress are going back to the Hill right now to cast a vote, and we have a press conference at 1 p.m. to go over what just happened here today. And if you weren't worried for the political prisoners already, it's time that Americans step up and we do what's right. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to check on these prisoners because, as Marjorie Taylor Greene said earlier, she said, if this is any indication of what's happening to the prisoners, she's more worried now than she was before. Absolutely egregious behavior, rude behavior, and manipulative. It is not what the United States is all about. So we're going to go right now. We're going to jump in the car and head over to another press conference with these guys. So if it's possible to replay some of this footage, this car ride's going to be a bit snug. So I'm going to mute the mic really quick, and don't go anywhere because we'll be right back.